All right, good evening, everybody. This is the meeting of the Rockland Fire Station Building Committee. It is January 12th, 2022 at 7:01 p.m. We'll call the meeting to order. We have a quorum. I know we haven't met. It's been almost, I looked at the records, it's almost been 3 years since we've met. So I appreciate everybody hanging in there and coming back and being part of this meeting tonight. A lot has happened since we've met. COVID, new town administrator. A new school is being built. So, lots of challenges that have come about. And I think, we just need to get reconnected and reestablished and back on our mission of design, getting a new fire station for the town. Again, thank you all for being here. I would say that, the biggest change has come to this town, and it's great is having Doug Lapp as town administrator. Doug is new to this committee, but certainly not to the town. What Doug brings with him from Sandwich is that he's been through the process of building fire stations, 2 of them, I believe. Doug, is that correct? So Doug had a list of items that he wanted to share with us. So before we get into any sort of meat of the meeting, I'd really like to have Doug, give his input and go from there. Doug?
Thanks, Chief. I appreciate that. And I certainly don't want to step on any toes at all, but as the Chief said, I did go through this process in Sandwich, and I learned a lot from it. And I think hopefully I'll be able to bring a little bit of that to what we need to accomplish here in Rockland. So one of the things I'll need to do is really kind of understand a little bit more about what this committee's done in the past. I've talked to the Chief and to Jean and the deputy a little bit. But I'll obviously, need to listen and really understand, more exactly what you guys have already done. But a few of the thoughts that I had that I talked to the Chief about, and this is in no particular order, this is just sort of how I was remembering things. In Sandwich, what we did, we were similar to Rockland. We were desperately in need of both a new fire station as well as a new police station. And initially, we proposed a pretty large $30 million project that was a great design, a great location. We thought it all made sense. And we pursued it in a very traditional manner where we had, the fire chief, the police chief, the town manager, and I did a lot of presentations, and we did a lot of sort of preaching, I guess I would say, and just trying to tell people what it is we needed and why they needed to support it. And ultimately that project failed. That got rejected by the voters, and we had to go back to the drawing board and scale it back. And so we scaled it back from a $30 million project down to a $17 million project. And what we ended up constructing was just outstanding. And I think the Chief has been there and he's seen it firsthand. So one of the things I learned in that process, once we get to the point where we have what we think are some good options that we want to pursue, is rather than that kind of traditional method that we did the first time, where the Chief and I or whoever just sort of does traditional meetings. I think if we break it up, and hopefully with the help of WRPS, if we can create lots of sort of smaller stories to tell about the facts that are going on. And I know everyone on this Zoom understands what the needs are with the department, but not everyone in the community is going to want to sit for an hour and a half, in the town hall conference room and listen to us lecture. So I think one of the real takeaways I learned is that if you look at some of the individual, I call them stories, individual issues that you guys have, maybe lack of parking, lack of good training rooms in your facility, gear storage areas to properly clean contaminated gear, space for vehicles inside the structure, all those kinds of things, which I imagine are issues. You can kind of take them one by one, and you have a little short 3-minute video about each one. You show the guys, the firefighters coming back from a call, and you literally have Chris or Dave Cable Murphy there with a camera just showing, here's where I'm at, and what the best practices are to actually keep you guys safe. And that way you can upload all these little short videos and people can see on their own time from their phone or on their computer the topics they're interested in. And I think we can reach a much wider group of people that way and get them more engaged. I'm sure you've already done this before, but I'd encourage you again to do another open house at some point in the future. I know the chief has already planned on doing that, but that type of thing is really invaluable. And maybe even whether it's a virtual open house, which I know the chief has thought of, or even just a traditional open house where people come in, but either way, record that so people that aren't able to physically come can watch it. I know, the Lincoln School has been talked about a lot in the past, and that's still one of the few sites the town owns that we need to really consider. And I know I'm just stating the obvious, but I think before we get too far ahead on any site, we need to have community forums with the abutters and just take that issue head on. Another thing that I learned, which we were not successfully able to do this in Sandwich on this project, but maybe we could do it in Rockland, is if there's a group of concerned citizens that want to form a ballot question committee, like a PAC. That's something that happened with the Rockland School project and was really helpful for that to get established. It happened in Sandwich with some other projects, but no groups ended up stepping up on the public safety front. But it's important because we as public officials, or even just the folks on this official committee, we can't go out and tell people, vote yes on this ballot question, vote yes to support it. We're not allowed to do that. All we can do is put out facts, but a private ballot question committee or PAC can do that, and that can be really effective. So that's something that hopefully folks that are concerned will step up and talk about. Later, we can certainly talk about financing once we get to that point. Unfortunately, unlike schools and unlike libraries, there's no big state agency that has huge matching funds for fire stations. So unfortunately, this is essentially going to have to come from a debt exclusion from voters, which is raising taxes. But so that's what it's going to have to be. So that'll entail a town meeting vote and a ballot vote at a town election. I know another question that I've talked to the chief about is timing, and the chief alluded to that at the beginning here. There's already a school, a very large, wonderful school project that's in the middle of construction, right now. So, and as you've all probably heard or felt yourself as taxpayers in the community, the impact of that is being felt by taxpayers right now. So the timing of that is obviously going to be important because there's a lot of other needs that the community has with infrastructure. We need a new community center, or at least heavy investment in our current community center, which will probably cost as much as a new one. We need a new sewer plant, or at least massive improvements to our sewer plant over the years. So we're gonna have to figure out how the timing of all this is gonna work. And that leads to another question that the chief and I have talked about, which is whether we end up recommending bundling this project with other projects. And I went through this, in my last town, and the dynamic that I found is when we as municipal officials propose a large project on its own, people will rightly say, well, what else are you going to ask me about later? I don't want to just make this decision in isolation. If you're going to hit me up next year, the year after that, we want to know the full picture. So then when we take the time to look at the full picture and say, well, okay, we need a new fire station. We're also going to need a new community center, and we're also going to need a new sewer plant. And then we're going to have to reinvest in roads. And when you add it all up, then people are like, oh my God, that's way too much. We can't afford all that. And then the cycle just starts over again. So that will be a discussion that we have to have, but bundling is not always a panacea. I think we should lay it all out, but ultimately, like the schools did with the school project, you have a need, you have a plan, and you can't necessarily wait to bundle it, but it's certainly something that should be talked about. And then I think the last comment I have, and then I'll stop preaching, is my advice for this group, and I'm certainly willing to help in any way that I can, because I really do strongly believe in the need for this project for the community. My advice is, as you kind of work toward, refining all the options and decide what you think is the best move for the town, I would urge you to have to schedule a meeting with the Board of Selectmen, which would be a public meeting, and provide them with options. Don't just come with one thing. I would give them options. You have whatever A, B, and C, or however many there are, but then have what your recommended option is as a group. But it's always best to give options and not just give one specific only choice, because no group, likes to be boxed in without any alternatives. So that's a little bit of what I've learned so far. I hope that's helpful, and I'm here to stick around for the whole meeting. So I hope that was useful.
No, Doug, that's awesome. In your advice and your input is greatly appreciated in this. I certainly haven't. I know probably most of the members on here have not been through, constructing a station. So thank you very much for your input on it.
If it hangs you up, what am I gonna do?
If you are on, can you please mute? I don't know who the telephone who called in with the number ending with 267. If you just please mute, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
It's not you, okay. 26.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Manitou Incorporated study. The town probably about just a little bit over a year ago, we were looking at some major growth in the northeast end of town. I had approached Doug when we found out about the numerous projects to really discuss fire station options with the growth in town. Do we have to look at a 2-station type of model? Do we stay with a 1-station model? And with the growth of town, we decided to look into hiring a consultant for the town to look into that. We ended up hiring a subject matter expert, Dr. Charles Jennings of Manitou Incorporated out of New York, upstate New York. He came in, he did the study for us. I had uploaded the study to an email to everybody. So hopefully you were all able to see that study. I believe that study's been also uploaded on the town website. I think we did that. Is that correct, Doug? Or the presentation of the study?
I think so. And if not, we'll certainly do that right away.
Awesome. Thank you. So that will be on there. Dr. Jennings came in and he looked at the operations of the fire department. He looked at our staffing. Then he looked at the town itself. He took years. I think it was 5 to 10 years of response data from the fire department. And he was able to break it down and look at what part of town we respond to most, how long it took to get to each end of town. And all that is part of the study. It definitely shows that northeast end of town, it takes a while for us to get to, but also it shows that the southern end of town up off the Millbrook area and Beach Hill also takes a while to get to. So based upon, our discussions with Dr. Jennings, he came in, recommended, he brought some recommendations, did some studies. Do we look at a 2-station model with the current headquarters location? And he included 99 Church Street, the Lincoln School site is part of that. That was one look, kind of, how that would help out, if that would help out, in what response, that would be. It was almost kind of what the existing numbers were. The next study was looking at the current fire station location / Church Street property with a secondary station down at the northeast end of town. He was calling it Blaisdell Park. I didn't even know it was called that until I saw the study, but it's the old VFW cutoff down off Hingham Street, between Hingham Street and Weymouth Street. And then the third option he looked at was a 2 fire station model, one at the northeast end of town at the Blaisdell Park, and then another fire station, a separate station more towards the southern end of town, the Market and Union Street area. I think, per response times and looking at the maps and looking at the data that in what he extrapolated into that is that, obviously 2 brand new stations, one located northeast in town, one located at the southern end of town, was best for the town as far as getting our apparatus and responses where they need to be. And then the next best, I think, option was again a two-station study, was a two-station model with the current fire station location or the Church Street. They're kind of one and the same with another station, again, at that northeast end of town. And then the third was the current setup we have, a single station at headquarters with, everybody running out of the center of town. But with that, if we were to build two stations, then we would have to staff two stations. Currently, we have 6 to 7 personnel on duty. If we were to staff two stations, we'd be looking at a minimum of probably 8 to 12 personnel. So with the expansion, of stations becomes expansion of personnel. So I think those are the options that we may have to bring to the selectmen and see what they, what they want to do. Ultimately, the ruling board of the town, and it's kind of going to be the ultimate decision. So does anybody have any questions or input or anything they read on the Manitou study, or any input that they want to add to that from just an open discussion on that?
Chief, just to probably follow up on the point you made about the one station model versus the two station model. He was very, very adamant about the one station model allows us to be flexible and cross staff trucks and move across the floor. He said we would definitely lose that advantage if we went to a two station model. And again, the negatives to that would be that we'd have to add staffing. So.
Yeah, thanks, Deb. You're 100% correct on that. Right now, we're pretty flexible. We can move people from truck to truck when they're in the station. And we want to be able to do that. We want to be as flexible where truck people can go on if they are located at different stations. So that is a good point. So, yes.
Chief, the only thing I would add is that I have money that says that retired Deputy Chief Killinger knew where Blaisdell Park was.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. I'm not taking that bet. Any other questions or input from that study that anybody wants to add, or any questions?
So, all right, I'll be you and I have talked, and I don't agree with Dr. Jennings' assessment of staffing, even in his recommendations. I still think that, having just completed the paper I completed for CFO, in 1991, we were at 8 firefighters a shift, doing 1,600 calls. Where now we just crossed 3,900 calls. We have 6 firefighters a shift, 2 shifts of 7, 2 shifts of 6. The national recognized standard for the Northeast is 2.06 firefighters per 1,000 residents. We should be probably 8 to 9 staff firefighters minimum across the board. So I don't think his report is perfect. I think he did what he was assigned to do with the response model, and the staffing component kind of fell into it. So I think we need to be cognizant of that's kind of a weak point, I think, in his study.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for this committee, I think we have to focus on his end of the report for the station placement and response times. I think the personnel is something that while the report and study was getting done, we kind of asked him to look into our efficiency. And I agree with you, definitely, I don't agree with his modeling. But I don't think, I think for the purpose of this committee, I think, the meat of that report is in the location of the stations. So, but yes, you are correct. So I guess not hearing any more input or any questions or anything like that on the Manitou study, we can move on, which it kind of flows right into as we've developed this and as we've moved forward as a committee in the past, we had looked at one station. I think, that's what the town can afford, as far as building station and also personnel for the fire department was a one station model. What's everyone's thoughts on how many stations that, you know, what do you think we need? What do you think that the town is going to eventually, you know, go with? What's going to be our biggest bang for the buck?
So I'll go with the one station model works. We're currently doing it. I think if you present on town meeting floor an issue with building 2 stations or reconstructing one here and then adding that additional that staffing, you're saying, well, I need $16 million and then I need, you know, another $1 million annually to staff these stations. I just think it's going to be too much. It's going to overwhelm the voters and the whole thing will get voted down. So I think we need to, you know, tighten up what we have and then try to expand.
Yeah, I do agree with that assessment. I also wonder if, you know, and right now, you know, the development at the northeast end of town seems to have not slowed, but it's become delayed. And I'm wondering if that, as that occurs, as that development moves forward, if we're able to, you know, get them to buy into a station for us, get them to be able to build a station for us to you know, serve their communities that they're building. You know, I think that's a big thing that we look into as that northeast end of town opens up. That's, you know, just my thought process. I don't even know if it can be done. But, you know, Sue, Jean, I don't know if Chris Philippos, Charlie, Lieutenant Williams, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll just add that, I mean, I think that some of it is going to be dictated by development. And I have a unique perspective because I sit on the planning board as well. And I think that you're going to see a lot of our development is going to be in that end of town. So I think we need to try to balance, you know, how we look at this, considering that a lot of development is going to be, you know, towards that end of town. And I think that, yes, the study can drive some of that, but I think it's going to come down to budget and, like you say, staffing. I mean, you know, we could move some staffing around if we had to, but again, it's going to come down to a staffing issue. But I think we need to keep in mind that the most potential for our growth is going to be in that sector of town.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Charlie. And, you know, I had a thought while you were talking, Charlie, is, you know, I know when the initial design in that we had with Schwartz and Silver, the architect, I know their initial designs for headquarters for the fire department to be built at, you know, hopefully, you know, Lincoln School or within the, you know, a new headquarters was based upon, you know, like 100-year building looking 40 years in the future, what, you know, the Rockland Fire Department might be. But is that something, you know, do we look at building a station that, you know, still is going to last, but do we look at building a station that we don't need to staff as many people in because we'd probably be at some point be at a 2-station model? And I think that would, you know, drastically reduce costs in size on any property, on any parcel of land that we look at. What's everyone's thoughts on that?
Scott,
Yes,
I
sir.
thought before we had talked about the clinic idea for revenue. Is that still in kind of play or is that not in play? Because that would help with the 2-station project, I believe.
I think it would. I don't know how we would staff 2 stations, Sue. I really don't. We would need probably 10 people per shift, which would be almost doubling the department.
Yeah.
Now, if we built a station and incorporated and no matter if we did a headquarters, and we did look at, you know, trying to partner up with a commercial type of venture or a clinic, I still think that's a great option. It's a great idea. You know, you see these minute clinics and these urgent cares popping up all over the place. You know, what better marriage would be then to be with a first responder and ambulance service, fire department. So you're 100% correct. And I think, I think we still look in that. We still, that's still an option that we bring to the Board of Selectmen. I think it's a good, finance option, maybe, hopefully, get
Yeah.
private venture to help us. So, yeah, absolutely. I still think that's on the table and a great idea.
Scott, Chief, could I make one comment?
Yes, Doug.
Just on the staffing piece, and I'm sure you already know this, but just for the others in case they don't, I think the only way to staff an extra station would be to hopefully get a federal SAFER grant where we get, where we get, 100% of the extra staffing costs covered at first, but then over 5 years, that reimbursement goes down. And then by the 5th year, the town has to absorb 100% of that cost on their own. So it just helps you transition. But once you get there, and I think it's maybe what the deputy said, it's essentially, it's got to be a tax override, an operational override to cover that. So and that obviously has to go on the ballot as well. So that's, I just wanted to, and the other point, I guess, on whether it's a debt exclusion for the building or an override for operations, the only group that cannot be done by petition, the only group that can put that on the ballot is the Board of Selectmen. So you really have to have them engaged and on board and willing to ask the voters for that. So that's the hard part about the operations.
No, absolutely. And again, I see us trying to do, and as the deputy said, I think he hit the nail on the head, asking, to do personnel and 2 stations or staff multiple stations, build one or remodel, however it would work, would be out of the question. I mean, I think it's an option we bring to the board, but I think it's also very difficult.
So Chief, I had a phone call the other day with Nick. He's the electrician for A.W. Perry. He's a friend of mine. He did work at my house. And we kind of were joking about the overlay project and the overlay district, and any projects that may be coming forward up there. He is aware of nothing that's coming soon. I kind of joked that we were, at least expecting a supermarket. The house that burnt down in Hingham on Christmas Day, they're talking about even selling it and letting somebody build a house lot there. And
Really?
everybody thought that was going to be an access road. He kind of believes that project is definitely put a hard pause and it hasn't heard. I mean, we all know that the gentleman that was in charge of it suddenly passed away. They've spent millions of dollars investing in it. I think they were upset that the town didn't pass that overlay district, but even the Hingham part of the project hasn't really been moving forward. Amazon has gone into the Casey's and Hayes building, and they're widening some roads and doing some stuff on the Hingham side. But I really don't think it's new development. It's kind of restructuring the buildings they have in Pond Park.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So I think we continue to probably focus on a headquarters, and I guess we still bring that option to the Board of Selectmen. 1 station versus 2 stations, but I guess we look at do we build a larger headquarters for 100 years in the future, or do we build, a headquarters, for the next 30 years? I guess those are the questions that we have to really look at. Jean?
I think you should, my opinion is build a larger headquarters for the future, because we really don't know the future.
Right.
You can always build well, not always, but you can certainly look into building a second fire station. I live in that northeast corner. We're so congested over here already as it is. It's difficult sometimes to get out of I live on a side street, so it's hard to even get out of the side street in the morning, but we would certainly welcome something up here, but I think right now, with all that we have going on and all of our needs, I don't think a 2 fire station is the way to go.
Okay.
I don't think it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I can't, Deputy Killinger, I can't hear you. If you want to call my cell phone and I can relay your question, or I can put you on speaker. And hopefully everybody will be able to hear you. While he's doing that, Deputy, did you have something? You're on mute.
So one more thing that if we do go to that two-station model, that we have to think about too is, $700,000 for a new fire truck, $300,000 for an ambulance, additional to the staffing costs.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't think it's feasible at all. I mean, obviously, the apparatus you could build into the debt exclusion or into the, the cost with the building, but I just think, I just think it would be just asking too much.
Is the idea behind building the bigger station that you would add more staff anyways? I mean, we had talked about, you've got 6 guys on a shift right now, and obviously I work right down the street. So, many times you walk by there and it's completely empty, and all of a sudden you've got help from Hingham and Abington. And so is the idea to add more staff to a larger station before you even go to that second station?
Absolutely, Gene. I mean, that's the goal. That's my goal. That's been my goal since I became chief.
Yeah, it
was
makes
to
sense.
continue to add staff. I mean, the current design of the station that Schwartz and Silver did would be able to house, 10 personnel per shift. Currently, we're at 6. As the deputy said, that's where we should be now, is 9 to 10 based on, the national models and staffing models. And, like you said, we crossed over the 3,700 run mark this year for the first time ever, or we became very close to it. It just does nothing. It's not slowing down. No vision is slowing down. So we're definitely gonna have to add staffing one way or another. If we did it with a one station model, we could probably ease into it a little bit slower than if, with a 2 station model, we'd have to add a bunch of staff all at once. So.
Right. And I believe one of the designs we were looking at too allowed you to add female staff as well, where it's not, your conditions now and not as suitable for female staff.
They aren't. They are not. We have the ability to staff female firefighters. It can be done. We have separate bathroom facilities. We could do separate rooms if needed. We've had a female on the department before, and she was able to make it work, but it's not ideal. The fire station, it's not ADA compliant. We have no ADA meeting rooms. When the deputy has a meeting with anybody, he's got to come downstairs and meet at a back table that is surrounded by, the seating is literally chairs we ripped out of a van. I mean, it's so unprofessional. We have no meeting space on the floor. The station, this current station, was built in 1938 with a 1978 addition, and it was designed, for a much slower department for a smaller town. Things have changed, and we need to grow a little bit, and we need that room to grow. So there's a lot that a new station will help us with. So I think Deputy Killinger has been trying to get in. I'm going to put him on speaker. Hopefully you guys will be able to hear this. So.
Hello.
Oh, hello.
The technology of you people. But I think what you should probably think about, or we should think about doing, is going with the one house. Whether it be a new one or add on to what we've got now. And then, as Gene and the deputy said, as things go down the northeast corner of town, then you could look at that. But I think for the time being, we probably should go with just the headquarters station, whether the same location or Market Street or the school, whatever. But I think that's the way we should play the game right now, and then see what happens in the future.
Yeah, no, thank you. I agree. Did everybody hear that? Awesome. Okay, good. So no, I agree, Deputy. And I really do. I think we're, I think we definitely, looking at a one station model. And now I think between now and the next meeting, we really look at or think about, do we do a little bit smaller of the station, a little bit more cost friendly to the town? Or do we continue with the designs that Schwartz and Silver has done, looking to build a station that's going to last, hopefully for the next 80 years like this one has.
Well, I think one of the things you gotta look at, and sometimes I feel that the town doesn't look ahead. They're doing better now, I think. But you've got to look at down the line, because sometimes when things get to a point where we don't, because we don't have the money, we don't have this, we don't have that. So probably we should go for the long haul, and then eventually, if things do develop in the northeast end of town, let somebody help us out down there.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah. Welcome, Chris DeFilippo. You see Chris just signed on. Just see if he has any input on.
Yeah, I've been, thanks for acknowledging. I've been on for about 10 or 15 minutes listening on the drive back to my office. I apologize for being late. I was just tied up at the high school with high school, junior, college search meeting. So just real quick, just to bring me up to speed, I just was curious, since my last attendance, and I haven't had the opportunity to be able to go fully through this latest report. I see that a study of the town's needs and the current equipment and apparatus and services has been done again, which parallels what we did in the first round study with Schwartz and Silver. In my perusal of it, I don't really see anything that's changed over what we did several years ago, except for maybe just the update to the number of calls and incidents, mutual aid needs and all of that. And I heard the talk about, this 2-station plan. And I know we explored this in depth with Schwartz and Silver during the initial study with their consultant. I'll give my opinion. I still stand by the single station headquarters. I think these square miles of Rockland and the access points of Rockland can be best served by a central location, as we had explored in our initial study. Just to help me come up to speed, is the Lincoln School property off the table at this point?
No, the Lincoln School property is still well on the table. It's still a town-owned property. I still think it's, I would say it is, for any better words, I'd still say it's a prime spot.
Okay, I know there was a lot of local, surrounding neighborhood resistance and apprehension to the idea when we first publicly announced it. And I know it's as close to the geographical center of the town that we're gonna get to. And I do see the, probably 20-year growth that we might need a satellite, but I still think for the short-term and ultimate long-term needs, I think that the town is better served financially by a single station for all the same reasons that you all have spoken to. Having to equip with apparatus an additional station, having to man it, having to operate it, the monthly and the annual operating costs alone are going to be prohibitive, besides the capital investment. I think, for us to be able to sell this project to the town, we need to keep our costs under control and digestible.
Yeah.
The town's been dealing with a tremendous amount of a tax base increase, that everybody in the town has had to absorb in their monthly mortgages or directly on their quarterly payments for those who don't have mortgages. And, you know, the resultant is an ever growing home value that I don't think I see, you know, flattening anytime soon, and everybody's going to be experiencing greater and greater taxes every year.
No, yeah, that's a great point, Chris. You know, in you're 100% correct. So I think as a committee as a whole, I think we're all on that same page. So, but yes, I think the big thing, the big difference between you know, some of the stuff Schwartz and Silva did for us, and then what the Manitou study has done is Manitou study really looked at the call volume, our response time to those calls, and kind of where the calls originated from. And when you look at the study, the majority of our calls are within the core center of town, you know, which you know, we serve out of this current station. You know, it just gets tough when we get up to the you know, up towards the Pond Street end of town. You know, we're still looking 8, 9, sometimes 10-minute response times due to traffic and congestion, as Gene pointed out. But you know, our calls are not as the density of calls in that area of town. We're not as great as the core center. So yeah, I still think I still believe that a single station is going to be what's best for the town. And now we just, you know, do we revamp the design that we were looking at, you know, to suit a more 20 or 30 year station with a potential growth in the future? Or do we look at that 60, 80 year station? And I guess that's the question I pose to everybody.
So I think we're all saying that the most future development is going to come from the north end of town, Home Depot area, the overlay district, Shingle Mill, if that ever happens. So if we crunch down the current design of the station, I know it went up to 10 firefighters staffed at one time. If we maybe pull that back to 8, adjust some things, the apparatus size, a conference room 2, or some offices, and we save some money there. And then, you know, so we'd be leaning forward to any major development up there that they would potentially build us a station. We could get a safer grant and do that. So I think we do concentrate on dialing back the station to a more reasonable Rockland station than what we're shooting for, I guess. So I'd be in favor of that.
Okay.
One
And
thing-
I think, and I think, you know, we look at other services as far as the station as well. You know, we look at, do we incorporate a clinic into it? As Sue said, there's been some discussion lately on a town mechanic. You know, I think that's a great idea for the towns to be able to share a mechanic. Do we look at putting the mechanic, housing that mechanic at the fire station? Do we create a mechanics bay? You know, with the appropriate lifts and tool space and offices that a mechanic would need for the town. You know, selfishly, I look at it as, you know, a mechanic that's at the fire station is, you know, not that they would be under my direct control, but at least our apparatus is sitting there and he's looking at it. And, you know, it's easier for our, you know, for our apparatus to, you know, get in line to get repaired, rather than if it's at a different location in town. Just, you know, these are just some thoughts. So, you know, we've been discussing that with Doug and police chief and highway superintendent. You know, we've been discussing that recently as well. So I think maybe we take a look at the design again, and not necessarily have it redesigned, but just some stuff to add for when the time does come.
Yeah, I think, and Doug, you can back me up on this, with the contract that was given to Schwartz and Silver, we haven't gone above the threshold, I think, to have to re-advertise this. I think from the procurement process, we can continue with Schwartz and Silver. We could revise their study and their program, give them some new direction on providing a new operational layout for the space of the building. If we adjust the program based on the ideas that you're talking about, and we should be, I would think, be able to amend their contract if we haven't closed it already, without having to go back to another study all over again.
So I can answer that. So our contract with, so we did, we did the procurement process. I don't think if we were to, so we hired them to do the study. If we were to go back to, have them do extra work, there would be additional cost to that. We have fulfilled our contract with them. But the way that the procurement was written, Chris, and the contract was done is, and it allows us through the architectural process to maintain them, to move on to any next phases.
Right, because of the fact that we did publicly advertise this RFQ, we could
Yeah,
retain
and it
them
was-
and continue forward.
And the way it was written in the contract, yes.
Okay. As long as an agreement for a negotiation on the fee is amendable to the town.
Yes.
Okay. So I think, from where I sit and what I bring to the table to the town is that from everything that I'm hearing, and there's a lot of new input, and I am truly appreciative of it. There's some real spitballing ideas here on how to make this project work and work to the benefit of the whole town. That we probably should think about setting up a meeting with Schwartz and Silver, and maybe it takes 1 or 2 meetings with us beforehand. But I think the best direction is that we need to develop a new program for this fire station before, so that they can come back to us with the same operational plan that they did and that you presented to the Board of Selectmen, Scott, using the new program.
Yes, yeah, I somewhat agree with that, Chris. I just don't know. I just don't know about the funding of that, where that money would come. We would have to get that, probably town meeting again, to get funding for that.
Right, and I
order-
think the best thing to do is to get input from Schwartz and Silver. Get an idea of what they think the cost would be to revise their study plan. They've already done the baseline work of what the needs for the town were. Now we're talking about changing the program. If we give them the new parameters for the program, what it would cost for them to adjust the preliminary design that they've done, the conceptual design, so that we could go to town and request funding for a new conceptual plan.
Chief, could I make a point there?
Yeah, please, Doug, yeah.
Well, I guess one thought I have maybe for you to think about is, because it's been a while since this group met, and I think technically you should go back before the selectmen to have the committee reappointed, because I'm not even sure if they were reappointed at the last slate of committees.
Okay.
But I also think, and I'm just going to throw this out there, I'm just kind of thinking on the fly, it might make sense, go before the selectmen, get reappointed, let them know what we're talking about. And then I would suggest, kind of not getting permission, but maybe a little bit kind of permission to say, we want to do a little bit of outreach with the abutters, because I'm concerned about getting too far down the road and the abutters feeling like they're left totally out of the loop. And I think if we engage them early on and really kind of get them involved and on board, it might make the whole process better. Because if we get too far ahead of ourselves and abutters are really opposed to it, the whole thing's going to fail. So I'm just throwing that out there, not in contrast to what Chris is saying, maybe in addition to it, but just kind of engaging in that right from the beginning. Just a thought.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Doug. I agree. I don't even know if we're at a point where which abutters we would go to. I mean, I don't think the committee, I know we talked about the Lincoln School site, and that's where the current design is essentially for. But, I think in this is where I'm not sure, like, do we go to Schwartz and Silver yet, or do we bring the concept of one station versus two stations versus one station, a smaller, a smaller 20 to 30 year station, or a larger 60 to 80 year station to the selectmen? Let them kind of choose and guide us which way. And then based upon what they say, start looking at, revisit our sites again and then talk to abutters. I
Yep.
think maybe I'm looking for some guidance from the Board of Selectmen of what their appetite is of stations, multiple or single, before we even think about sites.
Well, I agree with that, but I'm imagining that what'll be helpful for the board would be to have that discussion, but they're going to want to know what the abutters think too. So part of that discussion with them might be, okay, I see where you guys are going. I see how the one station kind of makes more sense. Why don't you go ahead and do a little bit of outreach, and let's see what the community thinks before we start going too far down that road. And my sense is, and when I keep saying abutters, I'm talking about the Lincoln School, because I believe that's the only site that we own, that has the potential to house this building that's in the right location. So, and my sense also is that the abutters are not going to care what the programming of the inside of the building is, whether it's a 30-year building or a 100-year building. They don't care. They're just going to be a big block on the corner with fire trucks and ambulances going in and out with sirens. Like, that's what they're going to care about. So I think getting through that, I don't want to say hurdle, but getting through that process first, I think will be important. And then if we get buy-in from the community, then I think we really dig much deeper. Okay, let's get into the programming, let's get into the design, and who knows, maybe there's even someone from that area that'll want to be part of that discussion. But I think maybe it should start with a selectman reappointment, talk about the process a little bit, where we're at, and then kind of just get some consensus from them, just to start talking to the neighbors. And my sense is that would be a good way to start.
Okay. All right. No, I appreciate that
Did we have a
advice.
meeting with them, Scott? I
I'm
thought
sorry.
Didn't we have an abutters meeting?
No, we had.
Oh, did they just join our meeting?
They just joined, a few of them joined our meeting. They came, they listened in.
As I recall, it was when Schwartz and Silver presented their conceptual plan to us before going to selectmen.
Yes. Yep. And they were there for one of our first meetings too. As
And
well.
I remember Schwartz and Silver did say that we probably should have a town hall meeting with the abutters. But we weren't that far ahead because we weren't
Correct.
sure where we were standing at that point.
Correct. Yep. Yep.
Has anything changed from the selectmen since what I recall was they were open to the Lincoln School, but they had left it that the committee be open to and continue to explore other properties? Has anything changed from that?
No, this hasn't been brought to the selectmen since then, Chris. I
Okay.
believe Mr. Penny gave us a kind of a go-ahead with the Lincoln to continue looking at it. And, but to keep our sites open on other locations. And that's what we did, with Manitou. We looked, are we going to go with a two-station study or not? So I think, right now, like what Doug said, is go and get everybody reappointed back into a committee and, get their appetite. And then, we'll have another meeting and we can discuss having an abutters meeting. Does that sound all right? Or
Unless somebody has another site potential to present, I would say that's probably the direction we got to go.
Well,
Yeah.
we had looked at the old Rite Aid site, but that's kind of off the table now.
Right, exactly. At the time, they were going through a transfer when we identified it, and
Yep.
obviously that didn't work out for us, but,
correct. Yeah.
and I'm not aware of any other sites in town that could be potential, even if a capital purchase had to be made, a real property purchase had to be made. Can't
And
think
if
of
I can
anything
just-
sizable.
And if I can just add, Chief, to Chris's point, the
Yep.
chief and I did reach out to the current owners of the Dollar Tree, and we didn't get a response. So we had our land use attorney reach out to the owners of the property who are out of state somewhere repeatedly. And unfortunately, they have no interest in selling. And it's unfortunate because it's in a good spot, but it's private property.
Yeah.
Right.
The only other big, property would be, the 14 Howard Street, the old Tedeschi offices, but, even, talking with the owner of that property now, then they're not looking to sell at all. And, I do think the Lincoln School site is really the only site, but without, having to say it or vote on it or, make anything definitive, we just got to keep it as an option. Or
Scott, can I
listen.
just, can I just add, at this point, the Lincoln School is the only piece of property. However, I would think that we were maybe several years out at this point before we broke ground. Is the Jefferson a possibility for a site? that's a,
You want me to speak to that, Chief?
Please.
Yeah, so, and I think you mean the Jefferson School, right? That's what we're talking about.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
So unfortunately, the answer to that is no. So the deal with the new elementary school that's being built, because it's actually being built on land that's was owned by the Parks Commissioners, there was a land swap that had to be approved by the state legislature. So to take parkland away, you have to add new parkland somewhere else. So part of that whole deal is Jefferson School is going to be torn down and it has to be turned into a parkland. It can't be developed for anything else. It was literally a land swap signed by the legislature and signed off by the governor. So
Okay.
good idea, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, no.
that answers that.
There you go. Yeah. Thanks, Doug.
And here I thought the Memorial School was the land swap, but
It's both. Yep, it's both. It's like a 2-for-1. Yep.
Yeah.
that's unfortunate.
Okay. Yeah.
So is the plan to present both a central station or a headquarters at the Lincoln School and a headquarters at the Lincoln School and a sub-building as our two options, or are we just going ahead with the one option of a fire headquarters?
I think as Doug put it, I think we give the Board of Selectmen those options.
Okay,
A headquarters where we currently are, a renovated headquarters where we currently are with a satellite station north end of town.
Mhm.
A new station at headquarters, a new station at the north end of town is option 2. And then option 3 would be, obviously, or option 1, a single headquarters, and that's it, a new headquarters at the Lincoln School. So, I think
Scott, if
we
you
give
could-
them those, when we come
Sorry,
to
go
them, we
ahead.
give them those 3 options. Go ahead, Chris.
Forgive my lack of in-depth review of the report, but did Manitou provide any sense of updated square foot pricing to building a fire station with their alternatives? Because the pricing that we had for the Lincoln School property is out of date, and there's been significant escalation since then. And the price per square foot for the Lincoln property was on the high end. This was a 80-year building, 100-year building that they were projecting it on.
Yes, and Schwartz and Silva did relook at that, Chris. I'll get that email to everybody and get that out.
Okay.
I just don't have that number off the top of my head, but they did look at it. And I don't think it was a drastic increase. I don't remember falling out of my chair.
Okay, because, in my business and the escalation rate just in the last 2 years alone has been so significant, it's tenuous. I'm dealing with public procurement bids all the time, and every time I put out an estimate, the estimate is only as good as the day I put it out, because the suppliers and the vendors and the manufacturers are changing their pricing on a bi-weekly, if not monthly basis. And the forecasted cost increases of materials that have to deal with electronics and just in raw materials alone for metal products, piping, conduit, sheet metal goods, it's gonna get out of sight. And, you know, this building could get very large in cost in the next 3 to 5 years, above and beyond what was projected before.
Yeah, so our initial cost estimate for the building was 18.56. And, you know, I had bumped that up, you know, like with furniture and equipment to, I think we were looking at like 22, 23.
Okay.
And then, so as they put it, today's cost, which was August of 2021, the building would be estimated at 20.7.
Okay.
So it's about 2.2
About a
million. So it's a
12%
little bit
increase
more
over
than,
the previous, yeah,
yeah.
which I think might not be conservative enough, in my opinion. I'm just gonna share that with you.
And again, I think that's what we have to look at is,
In the two-station scenario, of course, the selectmen are gonna ask, what is a projected cost to build two stations? You know, there's ways to reduce those costs by the level of construction. You know, we get away from masonry construction. You know, we deal with a combustible, non-combustible construction and reduce the costs. But you're gonna get less of a building. You're gonna get a lower life.
yep,
So,
Yep.
all things to consider.
yep, absolutely.
Scott, I think one of the other things too is that, you know, since we took this project on, several places have built stations within the last few years that I think we can kind of tap into and get an idea as well.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think what we'll do is I'll get everybody the committee paperwork. I'll get that from Sue Ide, and I'll email that out to everybody. So you guys can fill it in, and you can either you can email it back to Sue, or if you email it back to me, I'll bring it up to Sue. And we can get on the agenda for the Board of Selectmen to get the committee reappointed. And, you know, if they have any discussions for us at that time. And then, you know, reconvene at our next meeting and kind of go forward with exactly what we want to bring to the selectmen for options. Does that sound like a plan? Is that anybody?
Absolutely. That
Yeah.
sounds like a great.
Yes.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you. Does anybody have anything else that needs to be discussed tonight?
Good.
Awesome.
I
Well, I
don't.
appreciate everybody's time. I appreciate, you know, getting back into this and getting it moving. And thank you for your time and your input. So I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There's a motion, motion's been seconded. All those in favor of adjourning?
I,
Aye. Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Good night, Doug. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Good night.